Good evening, my friends. This is Paul, and today I'm going to be reviewing the new 3DS version of Fire Emblem Warriors. Although I guess it might be safer to say that it's the new 2DS version because it doesn't support stereoscopic 3D, and that's kind of counterintuitive to the name. It says new 3DS on the top as an exclusive, and yet it doesn't support stereoscopic 3D. Wasn't face tracking 3D the big deal of the new system? Anyway, minor gripe aside about the 3D, this is another entry into the Warriors crossover franchise, which started with Hyrule Warriors, which then was followed up by Hyrule Warriors Legends, and now we have this, which is a Fire Emblem take on the whole one unit army takes on a 900 unit army single-handedly using super over-the-top moves and providing tons of fan service. Yes, unfortunately both definitions are in here, but thankfully more of the just flat-out goodies, Easter eggs, nods to past games type of fan service, and not the adult kind as much. So, basically, one of the biggest steps forward between Hyrule Warriors and Fire Emblem Warriors is that Fire Emblem Warriors is fully voiced, and it has some amazing cutscenes that honestly could rival Hyrule Warriors. These are Wii U caliber type of cinematics, beautifully animated. The voice acting is also really superb. It looks like they took the worst performers out and replaced them with better actors and actresses to deliver the quality voice work that's deserving of a title that's actually less grand than the actors and actresses are making it sound. And especially the fact that Matt Mercer voices like two of the main characters, that definitely helps. He's one of my favorite voice actors ever. But the core gameplay is relatively unchanged, and the changes that are made are mostly to sort of incorporate aspects of the Fire Emblem franchise into a Warriors format. For example, enemies typically fall into three broad categories of weapons: lances, swords, and axes, and the standard weapon triangle that's been found in almost every Fire Emblem game to date is used here, although I found that if your unit is a high enough level, you can pretty much ignore the weapon triangle and just button mash to get your way through a situation. But it definitely helps for those that want a more strategic approach to the battle, so that you can send your sword wielders against axe wielders and send your axe wielders against swords and so on. There's also permadeath, just like in the mainstream Fire Emblems, but you can turn it off and do casual mode, which, at least in North America, has been around since Fire Emblem Awakening. There's also pairing up, which was also introduced in Fire Emblem Awakening, and you can do both dual guards and dual strikes, each with their own strengths, and there's even support conversations. There are also returning features from the Warriors games and possibly previous Dynasty Warrior games, I couldn't tell you, like making sure to defeat the fort captain and take a fort. There's a special move meter that you can fill up to make your character temporarily superpowered. You can upgrade your skills by purchasing crests. One of the benefits to this game is that you can also get master seals, just like in the Fire Emblem games, and then you can use those to make your crest chart even bigger. And just like in the main games, there's not a master seal for everyone, so you gotta really think carefully about who you want to upgrade. But unlike in Fire Emblem, using a Master Seal when you're at the base upgrade level of level 15 is not going to make your unit end up being worse just because you didn't wait until they were level 20. It actually, the stat boosts will gain accordingly even if you waited until you were level 40, which is really pushing it. And the units also gain their stats in the same format as they would in the Fire Emblem games, including attack, defense, speed, strength, and they're all incorporated really well into the Hyrule Warriors gameplay. In terms of modes, there's actually not that many compared to the Hyrule Warriors games. There's the story mode, which is approximately 19 chapters long. It's not the longest story in the Fire Emblem franchise. In all actuality, it's probably the shortest, especially if you're playing it on easy mode. But it does provide a healthy dose of Fire Emblem goodness for the most part before finally taking things semi-seriously near the end. Longtime veterans may be disappointed that the story mode focuses exclusively on characters from the Shadow Dragon, Awakening, and Fates universes, leaving characters from other games like Fire Emblem, Fire Emblem Gaiden to be unlocked separately outside of the main campaign, which is great if you were one of those people that were dragged into Fire Emblem through Awakening, and then Shadow Dragon's just there because it's like, ooh, Marth, he's a cool swordsman in Super Smash Bros. Melee. I wonder where he's from. There's also a really cool selection of music to choose from. And unlike the Warriors games, music is much easier to unlock, especially because to get the music track, all you have to do is really just hear it, and then you got it. The odd exception is in the next mode I'm about to talk about. We'll get to that. The point is, they have a quality selection of sort of half orchestral, half electric guitar songs that are based, again, between Shadow Dragon and Fates, but you can unlock alternate tracks from other Fire Emblems if you know what you're doing. Which brings me into history mode, which is kind of like the adventure mode in the Warriors games, where the you have various scenarios from past Fire Emblems, and they look and sound the same way as they did in the original game. So for example, if you say unlock a map from one of the GBA Fire Emblems, you'll hear GBA style sound effects as you move and select various options. It's quite nostalgic, although the actual gameplay is rather limited. You basically just, the enemies in your path constitute the missions that were in adventure mode, and the only real joy I found out of this mode was you can stockpile a lot of rare collectibles, and I'm guessing new characters because they revealed that Lynn was in the game, but she was nowhere to be found in the main campaign, so I'm guessing this is where you get her. And I found it incredibly addicting to manage to get these scenarios to happen, because to get them to happen, you have to fulfill certain conditions to make Anna show up on the battlefield, and then you can just get a memento from her, which in turn unlocks a new scenario. And since each scenario has its own music track that's separate from the main game, for me as a music completionist in like every game I play, this is going to be something that's taking me quite a long time to complete. And if I had waited to do my review until then, probably wouldn't have come for a while. There is DLC planned, and you can already buy a season pass for it if you have the update. The season pass is only $20 for all of it, which they each contain new characters, new scenarios, new support conversations that are each based on the Shadow Dragon, Awakening, and Fates universes, respectively. People like me, where my favorite game is Radiant Dawn, I definitely would have preferred characters like Ike, perhaps. If he's an unlockable character, please don't tell me. I really don't like being spoiled about games, but, you know, more content is always a cool thing, and especially if it unlocks new music, then I'm not going to be complaining. You also get a bridal costume for Lucina as an alternate option if you buy the season pass. Otherwise, you can purchase them individually if you don't like a certain game in the franchise, although if you buy all three separately, it'll be more expensive than if you just use the pass. There's also currently an option to download for free the Japanese voice pack, which is kind of odd that they didn't include it in the main game, but At least it's there, because a lot of people complained that it wasn't in Fates. There's a reason for that, but I'm not going to get into that for this review. Fire Emblem Warriors has relatively few complaints about it if you're a fan of Warriors. I mean, if you're not a fan of Dynasty Warriors style gameplay of basically just repetitive button mashing, then this game's not really going to do much to change your mind, even if you're a Fire Emblem fan. But on the contrary, if you are a fan of these kind of games, basically the graphics are the only true downside to this kind of experience. Oftentimes, I found that the environments looked really bland and ugly, which they did in Hyrule Warriors Legends, but at least the game performs like a dream and only has brief moments of slowdown. I also found that I was a bit frustrated that they couldn't have at least put in a little bit of 3D, because, okay, I can get why they didn't do it in the main mode, because that slowed down Hyrule Warriors Legends when you put the 3D on. But at least they could have done it for the cinematics, but nope, you gotta watch them in plain old 2D. Maybe because they wanted to be all-inclusive, because it's also on the Switch, but I still think this whole dying 3D concept is starting to get a bit old. Also, I was disappointed that amiibo usage is pretty underused in this game. Now, that could be to appease the complaints of fans that needed specific amiibos to get certain rewards in certain games. But basically, I actually found that the Fire Emblem amiibos are actually worse than the non-Fire Emblem amiibos. Because Fire Emblem amiibos, you scan them, you can scan up to 5 amiibos per day, and they can get you various weapons, whereas scanning any other amiibo will just get you a random goodie, be it gold, weapons, or um, an item of material that you can use to upgrade your crests. And I find that gold is way more effective than weapons in this game, as weapons don't seem to break, and you seem to get way, way too many for such a small army of characters. There are amiibos of Chrom and Tiki available, and they each get you a respective rare reward, but I don't really know much about them, and I don't think they're worth trekking down, because they seem like they're just kind of ho-hum things. Like, unlocking more music would have been my cup of tea, but maybe that's not for everyone. Also, I found that the story, while it's not bad, it's also not particularly compelling by Fire Emblem standards. Most of the plot twists are pretty predictable. Although it is amusing to see them recreate iconic moments from the Fire Emblem games and try to fit them all into this elaborate multiple worlds type of nonsense. And it's all good fun, and if you don't take it too seriously, you're going to end up really enjoying yourself here. Fire Emblem fans may not be a huge fan of the fast-paced nature, when most Fire Emblem games you can take as long as you want to plan out your move, but fans of both Dynasty Warriors and Fire Emblem are in for a real treat whether they play it on the new 3DS or the Switch, although the Switch definitely has the graphical edge, even from just previews that I've seen. So thank you very much for watching. If I missed anything, please be sure to let me know in the comments below. And until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless. Bye.